The wedding vows sounded like a life sentence. Every crystal chandelier in the cathedral sparkled beneath golden light, but Isabella Bennett saw none of it. She was too busy trying not to shake. The silk sleeves of her ivory wedding gown clung to her trembling hands as nearly 500 guests watched in complete silence. Politicians, billionaires, judges, foreign diplomats, men with faces that never smiled. They hadn't come to celebrate love. They had come to witness a peace treaty. At the altar stood the man everyone feared, Dante Romano, 34, owner of one of the world's largest luxury shipping companies, philanthropist, billionaire, to the public. But everyone important knew the truth. He ruled the Romano Syndicate, the most powerful mafia empire on the East Coast. His name ended wars, started others. People lowered their voices whenever they spoke it. Yet today, he looked as calm as a man signing paperwork. The priest smiled politely. "Do you, Dante Romano, take Isabella Bennett to be your lawful wife?" "I do." Not a trace of hesitation. No warmth, either. Just certainty. Then the priest turned toward Isabella. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears. This marriage wasn't her choice. 3 nights earlier, her father had confessed the truth. Their family construction company was bankrupt. Millions in debt. The lender wasn't a bank. It was the Romano Syndicate. One impossible agreement had saved everyone. Dante would erase every debt, protect her family forever. In return, Isabella would become his wife. She had cried, argued, refused, until she saw her father collapse under the weight of shame. He had built the company with his bare hands. Losing it would destroy him. So she said yes. Not for money. For family. Now every camera in the cathedral pointed toward her. The priest repeated gently, "Miss Bennett." She swallowed. "I." Her voice almost disappeared. Then she remembered something her late grandmother always said. Real courage isn't doing what you want. It's doing what love asks of you. Isabella lifted her chin. "I do." The cathedral erupted into polite applause. Someone in the front row whispered, "Poor girl." Another replied, "She has no idea what she's married." Isabella heard every word. An hour later, the reception occupied the top floor of Romano Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering skyline. Fresh orchids decorated tables covered in white silk. A string quartet played softly. Champagne flowed like water. Yet no one truly relaxed, because Dante Romano was in the room. He greeted business leaders with effortless confidence, accepted congratulations, signed documents, never smiled, never laughed, never touched his bride. Isabella stood alone near the balcony, quietly watching the city below. A familiar voice interrupted. "So." She turned. Trevor Collins, her ex-fiancé, the same man who had ended their engagement 6 months earlier. He looked her up and down before smirking. "I always knew you'd marry for money eventually." She stared at him. "I didn't. Really." He glanced toward Dante across the ballroom. "You expect me to believe that's love?" "No, it isn't." Trevor laughed. "I almost feel sorry for you. You traded your freedom for a billionaire's bank account." His eyes swept over her curvy figure with open judgment. "I guess somebody finally decided you were worth the investment." The words landed exactly where old insecurities still lived. Too big. Too ordinary. Not elegant enough. She had heard versions of those insults for years. Today they hurt less. But they still hurt. Before she could answer, a deep, composed voice spoke behind Trevor. "I'd choose your next sentence carefully." Trevor froze. Slowly. He turned around. Dante Romano stood there, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. The ballroom grew quiet. Trevor forced a laugh. "We were just catching up." "No," Dante answered calmly. "You were insulting my wife." The room became completely silent. Trevor attempted another smile. "I was joking." "I wasn't." Dante's voice never rose. Yet somehow it carried across the ballroom. "My wife will never have to apologize for the space she occupies." His gaze shifted briefly toward Isabella. "You don't need to become smaller for anyone." Then he looked back at Trevor. "But I suggest you do." Trevor's confidence evaporated. He muttered an apology before disappearing into the crowd. Isabella stared at Dante. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. You barely know me. I know enough." He offered her a crystal glass of sparkling water. Not champagne. He had noticed she hadn't touched any alcohol all evening. "You've been standing for 3 hours. You should sit." She blinked. "You noticed that?" "I notice everything." Before she could answer, one of Dante's security men hurried across the ballroom. "Boss." His voice was unusually tense. "We have a situation." Dante's eyes hardened. "What happened?" The West security team stopped an armed man near the underground garage. Isabella's stomach tightened. "Armed?" The guard nodded. "He wasn't after you, boss." Silence. "He had a photograph." The guard handed Dante a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a glossy wedding photograph. Only one face had been circled in red. Isabella's. Across the photograph, someone had written 3 words in black marker. "She dies first." A chill swept through the ballroom. Dante's expression became dangerously calm. "When?" "The shooter says midnight." Isabella felt her pulse racing. "Why would someone want me?" No one answered. Because no one knew. Or perhaps someone did. Dante took Isabella's hand for the first time that day. His grip was firm, protective, not possessive. "We're leaving." The orchestra stopped playing. Guests began whispering. Outside, armored SUVs roared to life. As Dante guided Isabella toward the private elevator, neither of them noticed a woman standing beside a marble column. Elegant black gown, diamond earrings, a champagne flute in one hand, a hidden earpiece in the other. She watched Isabella disappear into the elevator, then smiled. Softly, coldly. The bride took the bait. She ended the call with a single sentence. "Begin phase 1. At that exact moment, the private elevator carrying Dante and Isabella suddenly jolted violently. The lights went out, and the elevator began to fall. The elevator dropped with terrifying speed. The crystal lights flickered once before everything went black. Isabella's stomach lurched into her throat as the steel walls groaned around them. Someone screamed outside the elevator shaft, but the sound disappeared beneath the roar of snapping cables. She instinctively reached for the nearest support. Instead, her hand found Dante's arm. His grip closed firmly around her wrist. "Hold on." His voice remained impossibly calm. The elevator plunged another several floors before suddenly shuddering to a violent stop. The emergency brakes screamed against the rails, throwing both of them sideways. Isabella crashed into Dante's chest, her heartbeat racing so hard she could barely breathe. For several seconds, there was only darkness. The emergency lights finally blinked on, bathing the elevator in dim red light. Isabella slowly opened her eyes. "Ah, are we alive?" Dante looked toward the ceiling. For now. The elevator hung somewhere between floors, swaying gently. She tried pressing the emergency button. Nothing happened. "The power is gone. It wasn't an accident," Dante said quietly. She turned toward him. "You already know that?" He nodded once. Someone disabled the backup systems before the elevator moved. A loud metallic bang echoed above them. Both looked up. Another sound followed. Someone was walking on top of the elevator car. Isabella's breathing quickened. "Can they reach us?" "They're trying." Dante slipped off his tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She looked at him in surprise. "What about you?" "I'm fine. But you'll be cold." Even now, with unknown enemies only feet away, he had noticed she was shivering. It unsettled her. She had expected arrogance, cruelty, indifference, not quiet concern. The scraping overhead stopped. A moment later, sparks rained through the ventilation panel. Someone was cutting through the roof. Dante's expression hardened. He stepped in front of Isabella without another word, placing himself between her and the opening above. "You stay behind me." She frowned. "You don't even know if they're after you. I know they're willing to kill to reach us." The first piece of metal crashed onto the elevator floor. A masked man peered through the opening. The moment he saw Dante, he raised a silenced pistol. Without hesitation, Dante grabbed the attacker's wrist as the weapon came through the opening. The suppressed shot echoed inside the confined space. The bullet struck the wall only inches from Isabella's head. Dante twisted sharply. A sickening crack filled the elevator. The gunman cried out as the pistol fell inside. Another attacker immediately appeared. Then another. "They're coming through," Isabella shouted. "I know." Dante picked up the fallen pistol with practiced efficiency. His movements were controlled, precise. Nothing like the reckless violence she had imagined from stories about mafia bosses. The second attacker dropped through the opening. Dante struck once. The man's weapon skidded across the floor. A second strike sent him crashing unconscious against the wall. The third man hesitated. That hesitation cost him. Dante fired one carefully aimed shot into the ceiling beside him. Concrete exploded. The attacker retreated instantly. "They're buying time," Dante muttered. "For what?" He looked toward the damaged elevator doors. "To make sure we never leave this shaft." Almost on cue, a deafening explosion rocked the building. The elevator lurched violently again. Dust filled the air. Isabella lost her balance, but Dante caught her before she hit the floor. "You keep doing that," she whispered. "What?" "Catching me." His eyes met hers for a brief moment. "I intend to keep doing it." Before she could answer, voices echoed through the shaft. "Boss." It was one of Dante's security commanders. "We've reached the maintenance level." Dante stepped toward the doors. "Report." Explosives were planted beneath the elevator. "We're cutting you out." "How long?" 5 minutes. Dante's gaze narrowed. We don't have 5. Almost immediately, another metallic sound echoed above them. Fresh explosives. Someone had attached another charge to the roof of the elevator. Isabella stared upward in horror. They're trying again. Dante's jaw tightened. They won't stop until one of us is dead. She looked at him carefully. You knew this could happen, didn't you? Silence lingered for several seconds. Finally, he answered honestly. I knew marrying me would make you a target. Then why agree to it? His expression revealed something she hadn't seen before. Regret. I believed I could protect you. And now, I intend to prove I still can. Those words settled somewhere deep inside her. He hadn't apologized for who he was. He hadn't made excuses. He simply accepted responsibility. The emergency rescue saw finally began cutting through the elevator doors from outside. Thin beams of light appeared through the widening gap. We're almost through, a guard shouted. At that exact moment, Isabella noticed something reflecting in the emergency light. A tiny blinking device hidden beneath the elevator control panel. She stepped closer. Her heart stopped. Dante! What is it? She pointed toward the device. It's another bomb. He looked at it. The digital timer showed only 0:29. 29 seconds. The rescue team was still cutting through the doors. The attackers had trapped them inside a steel coffin, and there wasn't enough time for everyone to escape. The red numbers on the timer blinked mercilessly. 0:28. 0:27. The confined elevator suddenly felt even smaller. Outside, sparks showered through the narrow opening where Dante's security team struggled to cut through the jammed doors. Boss! Someone shouted from the other side. We're almost in. Dante didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the explosive device beneath the control panel. It wasn't a homemade bomb. It was compact, professional, military grade, designed to kill anyone trapped inside the elevator. Isabella forced herself to breathe. Panic never saved anyone. Thinking did. She knelt beside the device, ignoring Dante's immediate protest. Stay back. I can't. You don't know what you're looking at. No, she admitted calmly. But I know systems. He frowned. What? She looked at the exposed wiring. I've spent 8 years designing automated control systems for high-rise buildings. Dante stared at her. She had never mentioned her profession beyond saying she worked as an engineer. Now, as she examined the elevator panel, he realized how much more there was to her. She wasn't a construction manager. She was a building automation engineer, specializing in emergency systems, elevators, fire suppression, and intelligent infrastructure for skyscrapers. It suddenly explained everything. The confidence. The way she had studied the elevator since they stepped inside. The questions she had asked during the reception about backup generators and evacuation routes. She hadn't been making conversation. She had been observing. The bomb isn't the biggest problem, Isabella said quietly. Dante's expression hardened. What do you mean? She pointed toward the shattered control panel. They've overridden the emergency brake controller. If this device explodes, the blast won't kill us first. The elevator will. Outside the doors, cutting stopped. What? The explosion will destroy the braking system. We'll fall. Silence. One of the security men cursed under his breath. Dante looked at Isabella. What do you need? She met his eyes. Trust. He answered without hesitation. You have it. She nodded once. Good. She reached into her small evening clutch. Dante looked surprised. You carry tools? A habit. She removed a tiny precision screwdriver and a slim multi-tool. My father always said engineers should never leave home unprepared. The countdown continued. 018. She opened the damaged control panel. Inside, dozens of colored wires intertwined with the elevator's emergency circuits. This wasn't built by amateurs, she murmured. They've piggybacked onto the safety controller. Dante crouched beside her. What can I do? Hold the flashlight. He immediately aimed his phone's light exactly where she needed it. No questions. No interference. Only complete focus. She appreciated that more than he realized. Most people assumed they knew better the moment they heard she was a woman, or noticed her quiet personality, or judged her before she spoke. Dante simply trusted her expertise. It was refreshing. 012. Sweat rolled down her forehead. The wires weren't color-coded normally. Whoever built the device wanted bomb technicians to hesitate. Then she noticed something. A tiny manufacturer marking on one relay. Her eyes widened. I've seen this system before. Dante glanced toward her. Where? 3 years ago. A luxury hotel project. The emergency controller uses the same architecture. Hope flickered inside her. I know how it's connected. She carefully disconnected one relay. Nothing happened. Another. Still nothing. The timer kept running. 007. Outside, the security commander shouted desperately, "Move away from the doors." "No," Dante answered. "We stay." He looked at Isabella. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't crying. She was completely focused. He had negotiated billion-dollar mergers, ended gang wars, outsmarted powerful enemies. Yet he had never witnessed this kind of courage. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet determination. Exactly the kind that changed outcomes. 004. Isabella suddenly smiled. I found it. What? The trigger loop. Without another word, she disconnected a nearly invisible fiber optic cable hidden beneath the circuit board. The timer froze. 003. Nothing happened. Silence. Another second passed. Then another. The bomb remained inactive. Outside the elevator, cheers erupted. You did it. The rescue team finally forced the damaged doors open. Fresh air flooded inside. One by one, security personnel helped Isabella and Dante onto the maintenance floor. The bomb disposal unit rushed into the elevator. Its commander examined the device for barely 10 seconds before looking back at Isabella. Who disarmed this? She raised one hand. I disconnected the trigger. The technician stared at her in disbelief. That shouldn't have been possible. I've worked with similar emergency systems. He slowly shook his head. You didn't just save yourselves. He looked toward the shaft below. There were nearly 60 people inside this building relying on these emergency brakes. If this elevator had fallen, the counterweight failure could have triggered a catastrophic shaft collapse. Every guard in the corridor fell silent. She hadn't merely saved 2 lives. She had unknowingly saved dozens. Dante looked at Isabella differently now. Not with gratitude alone. with admiration. Deep, earned admiration. As emergency crews secured the area, Vittorio hurried toward them. "Boss, what now?" "The attacker we captured." Dante waited. "He confessed. And he says this assassination wasn't ordered because of you." Dante frowned. "Then why?" Vittorio looked directly at Isabella. "Because someone believes your wife is the only person capable of stopping what's coming next." Isabella's heartbeat quickened. "What does that mean?" Vittorio handed Dante a sealed intelligence folder recovered from the attacker's vehicle. Inside was a photograph. Not of Dante. Not of the Romano estate. It was an aerial blueprint of the city's largest smart port project. The same billion-dollar infrastructure system Isabella had secretly helped design before leaving her engineering firm. Across the blueprint, someone had written in bold black ink, "She built the key." And beneath it, the intelligence folder felt far heavier than paper should. Isabella stared at the aerial blueprint, her pulse quickening as memories she had buried years ago rushed back. The project covered nearly 2,000 acres along the city's coastline. It wasn't simply a shipping terminal. It was one of the most advanced automated ports in the world, designed to control cargo traffic, customs security, emergency response systems, and AI-guided logistics through one central operating network. She had spent 3 years helping design its intelligent infrastructure before resigning after disagreements with the executive board. She had believed that chapter of her life was over. "It can't be," she whispered. Dante studied her expression instead of the documents. "You recognize it?" She nodded slowly. "I helped build the operating architecture." "How much do you know about it?" "Enough to understand why someone would kill for it." The hallway became silent. Vittorio closed the folder carefully. "Explain." Isabella took a slow breath, forcing herself to think like the engineer she had once been rather than the frightened newlywed she had become. "The entire port runs through one integrated command system." She pointed toward the blueprint. "Every security gate, every shipping container, every surveillance camera, every automated crane, every emergency lockdown. They're all connected." Dante's eyes narrowed. "So whoever controls that system controls the largest shipping hub on the East Coast." "Exactly. And whoever controls the port." She finished his sentence quietly. "Controls billions of dollars in international cargo." A heavy silence followed. This was no ordinary mafia dispute. It was a war over infrastructure capable of shifting economic power across the country. Vittorio looked toward Dante. The attack wasn't about revenge. Dante nodded. "It was recruitment. They don't want Isabella dead. They want her working for them." Isabella folded her arms tightly. "They're wasting their time. I'd never help people willing to murder innocent civilians." Dante noticed the conviction in her voice. She wasn't trying to sound brave. She simply knew where her line was. For reasons he couldn't explain, that certainty eased something inside him. Most people bent under pressure. She seemed to become stronger. 2 days later, Isabella insisted on returning to work. She refused to spend her life hiding behind armored walls. Although she no longer worked in engineering, she had founded a small consulting firm that inspected commercial buildings for safety compliance and emergency evacuation planning. It wasn't glamorous, but it allowed her to improve the lives of thousands of people without chasing corporate politics. Her office occupied the 7th floor of a renovated brick building downtown. As the armored SUV stopped outside, she looked toward Dante. "You don't have to escort me every morning." "I know." Then why do you? Because someone tried to blow up our wedding elevator. She couldn't argue with that. Before stepping out, she hesitated. You have meetings today. So do you. Your company can't stop because of me. My company exists to protect what's mine. She raised an eyebrow. I hope you're talking about the shipping business. For the first time since they married, Dante laughed. A genuine laugh. Soft. Unexpected. My wife has a dangerous sense of humor. She smiled despite herself. So I've been told. He opened her door. Call me if anything feels unusual. I will. As she walked toward the entrance, several employees stared openly at the convoy waiting outside. Whispers followed her into the lobby. Some admired the luxury. Others feared it. A few assumed she had married only for wealth. Isabella ignored every glance. She had spent too many years allowing strangers to define her worth. Not anymore. By midday, she was reviewing evacuation plans for a children's science museum when her receptionist entered. There's someone asking for you. Who? He wouldn't give his name. Isabella frowned. Did he schedule an appointment?
No. He only said you designed something he desperately needs. A warning bell rang in her mind. She quietly pressed the silent alert button hidden beneath her desk. It connected directly to Dante's security team. Send him in. A distinguished man in an expensive navy suit entered carrying a leather briefcase. He looked to be in his late 50s. Perfectly groomed. Warm smile. Confident posture. The kind of executive she had met countless times during her engineering career. Mrs. Romano. I prefer Isabella. He smiled. Of course. My name is Richard Halden, the chairman of Apex Maritime Solutions. She recognized the company instantly. One of the largest global competitors to Dante's shipping empire. What can I do for you? He placed a thick contract on her desk. I'd like to hire you. I'm not looking for new clients. You haven't heard my offer. I'm listening. We're building a next-generation international cargo terminal. I know. I've read about it. Then you also know no one understands intelligent port infrastructure better than you. She remained polite. I'm flattered. But my answer is still no. Halden didn't appear disappointed. Instead, he opened the briefcase. Inside were architectural renderings and a cashier's check. $50 million. Isabella's eyes widened. I think you added an extra zero. I didn't. He gently slid the check toward her. $50 million. For 1 year of consulting. She pushed it back without touching it. I'm not interested. His smile faded slightly. Everyone has a price. No. Everyone has values. And mine aren't for sale. Before Halden could respond, Dante entered the office. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't hurried. Yet the room instantly felt colder. Halden slowly stood. Mr. Romano. Dante's expression remained unreadable. You offer my wife $50 million. I offered a business opportunity. You attempted to purchase her principles. Halden shrugged. I merely tested them. And they're apparently expensive. Dante looked toward Isabella. Would you excuse us for a minute? She nodded and stepped into the reception area. Through the glass walls, she couldn't hear the conversation, but she watched both men carefully. Neither appeared angry. Neither pointed fingers. They simply stood facing one another. When Halden finally left 10 minutes later, the confidence he had entered with was gone. Dante walked back into the office. What did you say to him? The truth. What truth? That if he ever approached you without your permission again. He adjusted his cufflinks calmly. Our next conversation wouldn't happen in an office. She sighed. I suppose I should tell you not to threaten people. You should. Did you? He looked almost amused. I didn't need to. Before she could ask what he meant, Vittorio's phone rang. He answered. His expression darkened immediately. Boss. What is it? Our cybersecurity division just detected an unauthorized login. Dante became still. Where? Vittorio swallowed. The central operating system of the smart port. Isabella's face drained of color. That's impossible. Vittorio looked directly at her. The login credentials belonged to one person. She already knew the answer before he spoke. They were yours. The room fell silent. Someone had just used Isabella's highest-level security credentials to infiltrate the most advanced port system in the country. And, according to the digital records, it looked as though she had done it herself. The conference room fell into stunned silence. No one spoke for several long seconds. Isabella stared at the security report on Vittorio's tablet, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Her employee identification number, her encrypted engineering credentials, her digital signature. Everything matched perfectly, except she hadn't logged into the SmartPort system in over 2 years. That's impossible, she whispered. It shouldn't be possible. Dante didn't look at the screen. He looked at her. I believe you. The simple statement caught everyone by surprise. Even Vittorio glanced toward him. You are going to ask whether I did it? Isabella asked quietly. If you had, Dante replied, you would have told me before someone else did. His confidence steadied her racing thoughts. She took a deep breath and forced herself to think logically. If someone is using my credentials, then they either stole my authentication keys or they copied my biometric encryption before I left the project. Can that be done? Vittorio asked. Not easily. She frowned as another memory surfaced. But someone inside the original engineering team could have accessed the development servers. Dante immediately turned toward Vittorio. Find every executive who supervised that project. They're already being investigated. No. Dante's voice remained calm. I want everything. Financial records, travel history, family connections. If someone spent years building this operation, they left footprints. Vittorio nodded. It'll be done. Just then another alert flashed across the tablet. A red warning banner covered the screen. Unauthorized access expanding. The hacker wasn't simply inside the system anymore. Whoever had stolen Isabella's credentials was taking control. Less than 20 minutes later, Dante's motorcade raced toward the city's coastal district. Helicopters thundered overhead while police cleared traffic ahead of the convoy. As they approached the waterfront, Isabella looked through the SUV window. The massive smart port stretched for miles. Towering automated cranes moved shipping containers with machine precision. Cargo vessels lined the docks. Thousands of workers carried out their daily routines, unaware that something terrible was unfolding beneath the surface. Vittorio received another update through his earpiece. The hackers have overridden container tracking. What about emergency systems? Dante asked. They're becoming unstable. Isabella's heartbeat quickened. If they gain full control. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Dante understood.
Dante understood. They could turn the entire port into a weapon. She nodded grimly. Automated cranes weigh hundreds of tons. Fuel pipelines. Chemical storage. Electrical substations. If those systems fail together, the casualties would be catastrophic. The convoy entered the secure operations compound where engineers, cybersecurity specialists, and government officials crowded around enormous digital displays. Every monitor flashed warning messages. One exhausted technician looked up as Isabella entered. Mrs. Romano? She nodded. We've been locked out. I built part of this system, she said. Take me to the control room. The technician hesitated. Federal authorities ordered everyone out. Dante stepped forward. She's staying. No one argued. Inside the command center, Isabella immediately noticed something the others had missed. Zoom in on Terminal 7. The technician obeyed. Rows of shipping containers appeared. There. She pointed towards several blinking icons. They're moving. The technician frowned. Those containers were scheduled to remain stationary. They're moving because someone changed their destination codes. What are they carrying? His fingers flew across the keyboard. A moment later his face turned pale. Industrial explosives. The room went silent. Before anyone could react, another engineer shouted from across the room. Crane 21 is activating. No one's operating it. Everyone turned toward the giant observation windows overlooking the harbor. One of the enormous automated cranes suddenly lurched into motion. It lifted a 40-foot container loaded with explosives. Instead of placing it onto a cargo vessel, the crane swung toward the busy loading docks where hundreds of workers were gathered. People below had no idea. Sound the evacuation alarm, Isabella shouted. It isn't responding. The hackers disabled it. Without another word, she sprinted toward the emergency engineering station. Her fingers flew across an older manual control console that had been disconnected from the network years earlier. A gray-haired maintenance supervisor stared at her. That system hasn't been used in forever. It doesn't matter. It isn't connected. She smiled briefly. Exactly. Within seconds, she bypassed the digital network and activated the independent emergency sirens. The deafening alarms echoed across the harbor. Workers looked up in confusion before security officers began shouting evacuation orders. Hundreds started running, but the crane continued swinging. The explosive container hung directly above the loading area. One cable failure, one deliberate release, and the blast would level half the terminal. Outside, Dante watched the massive crane through binoculars. His security commander rushed over. "Boss, we found the sabotage team." "Where?" "Warehouse 12. "How many?" "At least 20. Dante calmly handed the binoculars to Vittorio. "Protect Isabella." "What about you?" "I'm ending this." Before anyone could object, he climbed into an armored SUV with 6 members of his tactical unit. The vehicle accelerated toward the warehouse. Bullets struck the windshield almost immediately. Hidden gunmen opened fire from rooftops. Dante's driver swerved through a hail of gunfire. The tactical team returned fire with disciplined precision. Glass shattered. Concrete exploded. Smoke drifted through the shipping yard. The first major battle had begun. Inside Warehouse 12, the attackers waited behind stacks of cargo containers. They wore military equipment instead of gang colors. Everything about them suggested professional training. As Dante entered through the side loading bay, his men spread out in practiced formation. No shouting, no panic, only precise movements. One mercenary appeared behind a forklift. Dante fired once. The man's weapon clattered to the floor. Another attacker rushed from an overhead catwalk. Vittorio's sniper neutralized him before he reached the railing. The firefight intensified. Meanwhile, Isabella remained locked inside the control room. Sweat rolled down her forehead as she fought against the hacked operating system. Every command she entered was rejected. Every firewall had been rewritten. Then she noticed something hidden beneath thousands of lines of code. A maintenance protocol. Forgotten. Ignored. Still active. She smiled. "I've got you. What did you find?" the technician asked. "The system still trusts one thing." "What?" She connected an old engineering service terminal that had never been upgraded. It still recognizes the original architect. Within seconds, manual authority returned. She immediately redirected the crane. Outside, the giant machine stopped only seconds before releasing the explosive container. Instead of dropping it onto the crowded dock, It lowered the cargo safely onto an isolated concrete platform. A collective cheer erupted inside the command center. Hundreds of workers had just been saved. The celebration lasted only a moment. One of the surveillance screens suddenly changed. Instead of security footage, a masked figure appeared. His voice was electronically distorted. "Well done, Isabella." She froze. "I knew you'd stop the explosion." The man chuckled softly. "That's why it was only a distraction." Every monitor switched to another camera. This one showed Dante's convoy outside Warehouse 12. Then the image zoomed in. Beneath Dante's armored SUV, a magnetic explosive device blinked steadily. The masked man smiled. "Now let's see who reaches him in time." The transmission ended. Isabella's blood ran cold. "Dante!" She spun toward the exit and ran. Behind her, every alarm in the command center began screaming once again. "Dante!" Isabella's voice echoed through the operations building as she sprinted toward the exit. Engineers jumped out of her way while security officers chased after her. But she never slowed. Every second mattered. Outside, the harbor had become a battlefield. Smoke drifted above rows of shipping containers. Sirens wailed from every direction. Police helicopters circled overhead while firefighters rushed toward burning warehouses. Across the terminal, Dante's armored SUV remained exactly where it had stopped after the firefight. Hidden beneath it, a magnetic explosive blinked steadily. Without thinking, Isabella ran directly toward it. "Mrs. Romano!" Vittorio shouted. "Stop!" His expression changed instantly. "Isabella!" She pointed beneath the vehicle. She ignored him. Dante had just emerged from Warehouse 12 with 2 members of his tactical team when he saw her running. His expression changed instantly. "Isabella!" She pointed beneath the vehicle. "Bomb!" Every guard immediately stepped back. Bomb disposal officers were still several hundred yards away. There wasn't enough time. The digital timer attached to the device flashed. 1:46. Dante moved toward the SUV. She blocked his path. "No." His eyes narrowed. "I can move the vehicle. You'll trigger the pressure sensor. You don't know that. I designed this type of magnetic stabilization system during my defense contract." Silence. Every person nearby turned toward her. "You what?" Dante asked quietly. She took a steady breath. "My consulting company once assisted with military emergency transport systems. I never discussed it because the contracts were confidential." She knelt beside the vehicle. "This bomb wasn't built to explode if someone cuts the wrong wire. It detonates if the vehicle's weight shifts." The bomb technician finally reached them, breathing heavily. He looked underneath the SUV. His face drained of color. "She's right." He slowly looked at Isabella. "Have you seen this design before?" "Only once." "Can you disable it?" He hesitated. "I can try." She shook her head. "We don't have time for guessing." The technician quietly stepped aside. "You lead." Dante crouched beside her. "What do you need?" She met his eyes. "I need you to trust me again. You already have my trust. And I need everyone else." She looked toward the security teams. To move back at least 200 feet. Nobody wanted to leave Dante. He gave a single command. "Do it." Without another word, every guard obeyed. That told Isabella everything she needed to know about the loyalty he inspired. Not fear, trust. She slid beneath the SUV, ignoring the dust and broken glass beneath her gown. The explosive device had been expertly concealed against the armored frame. 3 magnetic anchors, a pressure stabilizer, a motion sensor, and a tiny secondary transmitter. She smiled faintly. There you are. The bomb technician lay beside her, watching carefully. You found something? This isn't the primary trigger. She pointed toward the transmitter. Someone wants to watch the explosion. If we disable this first, they'll know. So we leave it active. The technician stared. I never would have thought of that. Isabella carefully disconnected one magnetic anchor. Nothing happened. Then a second. Still nothing. The timer continued counting down. 0:58. Outside the safety perimeter, Dante watched silently. Every instinct screamed at him to pull her away. Instead, he remained exactly where she had asked him to stand. She trusted her knowledge. He trusted her. That was enough. 0:41. The final magnetic lock refused to release. It was welded, Isabella muttered. The technician frowned. Can you cut it? No. She reached for a steel maintenance rod lying nearby. What are you doing? Changing the weight distribution. She wedged the rod beneath the device with incredible precision. Millimeter by millimeter. The pressure shifted away from the vehicle's chassis. The final magnet released. The bomb rested entirely on the steel support. She carefully lifted it free. The technician immediately carried it toward a reinforced blast container. 30 seconds later, the controlled explosion shook the harbor. The armored SUV remained untouched. A thunderous cheer erupted across the terminal. Several firefighters actually applauded. One engineer wiped tears from his face. You saved all of us. Isabella simply smiled. I saved the people standing nearby. She looked toward the harbor. There are still others who need help. Dante walked toward her slowly. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he gently brushed a streak of grease from her cheek with the back of his fingers. You frightened me. She blinked. I thought you weren't easily frightened. I'm not. He held her gaze. But the thought of losing you. He stopped. The unfinished sentence said everything. For the first time since their marriage, the distance between them disappeared. She reached for his hand. You didn't lose me. No. His voice was almost a whisper. I didn't. Their fingers remained intertwined. Neither noticed dozens of dockworkers quietly smiling as they watched. One older crane operator nudged his co-worker. That's not a business marriage anymore. His friend chuckled. Hasn't been for a while. 3 evenings later, Sophia insisted they both leave work behind. No meetings. No security briefings. No discussing explosions. Dante looked almost suspicious. What exactly are you planning? Dinner. We eat every day. Not like this. She practically pushed both of them toward the estate's glass conservatory overlooking the gardens. The room glowed with candlelight. Fresh roses climbed the stone walls. Soft piano music drifted through hidden speakers. The meal itself was surprisingly simple. Fresh bread, homemade pasta, roasted vegetables, lemon tart. Nothing extravagant. It smells incredible, Isabella said. Dante smiled faintly. My mother believed simple food leaves more room for honest conversation. She laughed. I think I'd have liked her. I know you would have. As they ate, conversation came more naturally than ever before. There were no negotiations, no strategies, no discussions about enemies. Instead, they spoke about childhood memories, favorite books, embarrassing school stories. Sophia quietly disappeared halfway through dinner, leaving them alone beneath the lanterns. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable, not awkward. Finally, Isabella asked softly, "What were you like before all of this?" Dante looked toward the gardens. "I wanted to become an architect." She smiled. "Really? I used to sketch buildings. What happened? My father was murdered." His expression grew distant. Dreams changed. She reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. "I'm sorry." He looked down at their hands. "No one has ever asked about the boy I used to be. I wanted to know him." Those words lingered between them. Then Dante quietly said, "People have spent years convincing you that you should take up less space." She looked at him. "They were wrong. You don't have to hide your brilliance. You don't have to apologize for your kindness. And you never have to make yourself smaller to fit into someone else's world." A tear escaped before she could stop it. "No one has ever made me feel enough." He smiled warmly. "You always were." For the first time since they met, she leaned forward and rested her head lightly against his shoulder. He didn't move. He simply closed his eyes, grateful for the quiet moment. It lasted only seconds. Vittorio appeared at the conservatory entrance, his usually composed face unusually tense. "Boss." Dante immediately stood. "What happened?" "We recovered encrypted files from the mercenaries' communication server." "And?" Vittorio placed a tablet on the table. A single photograph filled the screen. Isabella's face. Taken years ago. She was standing inside the original Smartport control center during construction. Across the image, someone had written one sentence in bold red letters. "She doesn't remember what she built." Isabella stared at the message. Her heart sank. "What does that mean?" Vittorio looked at both of them. "I'm afraid we're about to find out." The conservatory grew silent. Rain tapped softly against the glass ceiling, while the photograph remained illuminated on the tablet between them. Isabella stared at the younger version of herself, standing proudly inside the Smartport command center. She remembered the day the picture had been taken. It was the week her engineering team completed the emergency response network. They had celebrated with coffee, cheap cupcakes, and a group photograph. Nothing about that memory felt suspicious. "I don't understand," she said quietly. Vittorio enlarged the image. "Look closer." At first, Isabella saw nothing unusual. Then she noticed a man standing several feet behind her. His face had been partially hidden by a hard hat. She frowned. "I don't remember him." "You weren't supposed to." Vittorio tapped the screen again. Facial recognition software displayed a name. Gabriel Voss. Former cybersecurity consultant. Officially deceased 3 years earlier. Dante folded his arms. "He isn't dead." Vittorio nodded. "We confirmed it an hour ago. The death certificate was fabricated, and according to intelligence reports." He looked toward Isabella. "He personally supervised the software architecture beneath your emergency systems." A cold feeling settled in Isabella's chest. "Which means you unknowingly helped him hide something." The following week, The city hosted the prestigious International Maritime Innovation Summit, attracting government officials, global investors, and business leaders from around the world. The event celebrated the future of international shipping, advanced infrastructure, and intelligent logistics. Normally, Dante attended only long enough to fulfill business obligations before quietly leaving. This year was different. The Smartport attack had shaken the industry. Everyone expected him to make a statement. No one expected him to arrive with Isabella. As their motorcade stopped outside the Grand Meridian Convention Center, hundreds of photographers crowded behind security barriers. Camera flashes illuminated the entrance like lightning. Luxury vehicles lined the red carpet. News reporters spoke excitedly into microphones. "There they are. Mr. Romano is here." And, "That's Mrs. Romano beside him." The car door opened. Dante stepped out first before turning and offering his hand. Isabella emerged wearing a deep sapphire blue gown that flowed elegantly to the floor. The dress celebrated her curves instead of hiding them, while delicate silver embroidery shimmered beneath the evening lights. She wore her curls naturally, and the only jewelry on her wrist was the handcrafted silver bracelet Dante had given her after they first met. For one long moment, the photographers stopped shouting. Someone quietly whispered, "She's stunning." Another replied, "She looks like she belongs there." Isabella heard the words. This time, they didn't make her uncomfortable. They reminded her how much she had changed. Not on the outside. Inside. She no longer measured herself through strangers' opinions. As they entered the ballroom, conversations paused. Corporate executives greeted Dante respectfully. Government ministers shook his hand. Several international investors introduced themselves to Isabella, curious about the engineer whose quick thinking had prevented the Smartport disaster. One elderly woman approached with warm eyes and a walking cane. "Mrs. Romano?" "Yes. I wanted to thank you." Isabella smiled politely. "For what?" "My grandson works at Terminal 7. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "He came home because of you." She squeezed Isabella's hands gently. "I prayed every night for whoever saved those workers. I never imagined I'd meet her." Emotion caught in Isabella's throat. "I only did what anyone should." The elderly woman smiled. "No, dear. You did what very few people could." She walked away before Isabella could answer. Dante noticed the moisture gathering in Isabella's eyes. "You changed more lives than you know." She looked toward the crowded ballroom. "I never wanted recognition." "I know. That's why you deserve it." Later that evening, the conference moderator announced an unexpected addition to the program. "Ladies and gentlemen, following recent events at the East Harbor Smart Port, we have invited one of the project's original engineers to discuss ethical infrastructure design." Several guests exchanged confused glances. No one had seen Isabella's name in the official schedule. She turned toward Dante. "You knew." He smiled faintly. "I suspected they'd ask." "You didn't warn me. You've spent your life preparing for moments exactly like this." He gently squeezed her hand. "They simply don't know it yet."
The audience applauded as Isabella walked toward the stage. Bright lights illuminated the podium. Nearly 1,000 people watched. She took a slow breath. Years ago, public speaking had terrified her. Tonight, she focused only on the truth. Technology, she began, is often described as intelligent. She paused. But technology has no conscience. Only the people who build it do. The ballroom became silent. She spoke about responsibility instead of profit, about designing systems that protected ordinary workers before shareholders. about creating emergency protocols that valued human lives above efficiency. She admitted mistakes her team had made. She explained how hidden vulnerabilities could become dangerous when ethics disappeared from engineering. Her voice never became dramatic. It remained sincere, honest. When she finished, the audience stood in applause. Not because she had delivered a perfect speech, because she had spoken with conviction. Across the ballroom, several former colleagues who had once dismissed her quietly lowered their eyes. One executive whispered to another, "We never should have ignored her recommendations." Another nodded. "She warned us years ago." For the first time in Isabella's professional life, the people who had underestimated her were forced to acknowledge her brilliance. The evening's final presentation belonged to Dante. He stepped onto the stage with his usual quiet confidence. Instead of discussing profits or expansion, he surprised everyone. "My company has been successful for many years." He looked toward Isabella sitting in the front row. "But success without responsibility becomes dangerous." He turned back to the audience. "Effective immediately, Romano Global Shipping will establish the Isabella Bennett Engineering Fellowship." The giant screen behind him displayed the announcement. A $100 million foundation dedicated to supporting young engineers designing safer public infrastructure. Gasps spread throughout the ballroom. Dante continued, "This fellowship honors someone who reminded me that intelligence means very little without integrity." He walked down from the stage, crossed the ballroom, and stopped beside Isabella. Then, in front of every camera, he offered her his hand, not as a billionaire displaying his wife, not as a mafia boss claiming possession, but as a man publicly acknowledging his equal. "Walk with me." She accepted. Together, they faced the audience. The applause became even louder. Hundreds of people rose to their feet. Some admired the announcement. Others admired the respect between them. Many admired both. Hidden among the catering staff, however, one waiter wasn't watching the stage. He was watching Isabella. His earpiece crackled. The target's public influence is growing. The distorted voice on the other end answered immediately. "Then Phase 4 begins tonight." The waiter quietly slipped a tiny encrypted flash drive beneath Isabella's chair before disappearing into the crowd. Minutes later, as the ballroom slowly emptied, Isabella bent to retrieve her evening clutch. Her fingers brushed against the unfamiliar device. Confused, she picked it up. There was no label, only a handwritten note wrapped around it. "Watch this alone." Beneath those 3 words was a symbol she hadn't seen in years. The original engineering logo from the Smartport project. And suddenly, she wasn't sure whether the message had come from an enemy or someone desperately trying to save her. The flash drive felt strangely warm in Isabella's hand as the last guests drifted out of the convention center. Music faded. Photographers packed away their equipment. Outside, black luxury sedans lined the curb beneath a cold autumn sky. She slipped the drive into her evening clutch without saying a word. Dante noticed. "What is it?" She hesitated. "I found something under my chair." His expression sharpened immediately. "Show me." She revealed the small encrypted drive and the handwritten note. Vittorio took it carefully, examining every angle. No fingerprints. No identifying marks. It could contain malware, one security specialist warned. "It could," Isabella agreed. "But if someone risks slipping it to me inside a room filled with cameras?" She looked toward Dante. "They wanted me to see something." Dante remained silent for several moments before making his decision. "We examine it together." She looked surprised. "The note specifically says alone." "I don't care. If there's a risk, you won't face it by yourself." Something in his calm certainty made her chest tighten. She smiled faintly. "You're very stubborn. So I've been told."
An hour later, they arrived at the Romano estate. Instead of using the main computer network, Vittorio escorted them into a secure cybersecurity laboratory beneath the mansion. The room resembled a government intelligence center. Isolated servers, encrypted terminals, air-gapped computers completely disconnected from the internet. A cybersecurity analyst inserted the flash drive into a sealed forensic workstation. Everyone waited. For several seconds. Nothing happened. Then the monitor flickered to life. A single video file appeared. No title. No timestamp. Just a blinking play icon. The analyst looked toward Dante. It's safe. Dante nodded once. Play it. The screen faded from black. A familiar office appeared. Large windows. Engineering blueprints covering every wall. Isabella's breathing caught. I know this room. It was my project office. The recording date appeared in one corner. 3 years earlier. The younger Isabella entered carrying a stack of architectural drawings. She looked exhausted but determined. Moments later another man stepped into the office. Gabriel Voss. Alive. Smiling. He closed the door behind him. The recording had no sound for several seconds before the audio finally cleared. I won't approve it, the younger Isabella said firmly. Voss leaned casually against the desk. Nobody will ever notice. I noticed. The emergency override you're requesting creates a hidden access channel. It's illegal. It could bypass every safety protocol. Voss smiled. You're thinking like an engineer. I need you to think like a businesswoman. She folded her arms. I won't sign it. Then someone else will. The recording ended abruptly. The room fell silent. Vittorio looked toward Dante. She refused. Dante never took his eyes off the frozen image. I knew she would. Isabella stared at the screen, confused. I don't remember this meeting. The analyst answered quietly. Traumatic memories are sometimes suppressed. She shook her head. No. I would have remembered refusing something like that. Vittorio opened another encrypted folder hidden on the drive. There are more files. The next video began automatically. This one showed the underground parking garage beneath Isabella's former engineering firm. Night. Rain. She walked toward her car carrying a briefcase. Suddenly 2 men approached from behind. One covered her mouth. The other injected something into her neck. The footage skipped forward several minutes. She was unconscious inside a black van. The screen cut to black again. What happened? Isabella whispered. No one answered. The third recording finally revealed the missing pieces. Hospital surveillance footage. She lay unconscious in an emergency room. Doctors surrounded her. One physician spoke to another. Memory loss is possible. Another replied. She suffered a severe concussion. The recording ended. Silence consumed the room. Isabella slowly lowered herself into a chair. Her hands trembled. I thought. She swallowed hard. I thought I'd been in a car accident. Vittorio looked at another document recovered from the drive. You were told it was an accident. It wasn't. Dante knelt beside her. They erased part of your memory. She looked at him with tears filling her eyes. I forgot because someone made sure I forgot. He gently took her hands. You survived. No. Her voice broke. I failed. I left without exposing them. You were kidnapped. You were assaulted. You lost your memory. His tone remained steady. None of that was your failure. Before she could answer, alarms suddenly echoed throughout the underground command center. Every monitor switched to emergency alerts. A security officer burst through the door. Boss, what happened? The eastern security wall has been breached. How many? Unknown. Another explosion shook the mansion. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Lights flickered. The attack had begun. Outside, flames erupted near the main entrance. Luxury vehicles exploded one after another. Masked mercenaries flooded across the estate grounds using military tactics. Rocket launchers, night vision equipment, suppressed rifles. This wasn't a raid. It was an invasion. Vittorio immediately issued commands through his headset. Alpha Team, protect the family. Bravo Team, secure the tunnels. Charlie Team, hold the North Gardens. Gunfire echoed across the estate. Windows shattered. Security lights illuminated the night like daylight. Dante calmly reached into a secure cabinet and removed a black tactical vest. He handed another one to Isabella. She looked at it. I've never worn body armor. Then tonight you'll learn. He helped secure the straps across her shoulders before checking the fit himself. It isn't too heavy? She shook her head. I'm okay. He looked into her eyes. No, you aren't. She managed a small smile despite everything. You're right. I'm terrified. He gently brushed a loose curl away from her face. Courage isn't pretending you aren't afraid. It's choosing to move anyway. She recognized the words immediately. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me. For a heartbeat, the war outside seemed to disappear. Then another explosion shattered the silence. The reinforced blast doors flew open. Smoke poured into the corridor. A squad of mercenaries rushed inside. The firefight began instantly. Dante stepped forward, shielding Isabella behind him as bullets struck the concrete walls. Vittorio's team returned fire with disciplined precision. The attackers slowly advanced through the smoke. Suddenly, one of the Romano guards turned around. Instead of firing at the attackers, he aimed his rifle directly at Dante. Time seemed to stop. The guard smiled coldly. I'm sorry, boss. I was never yours. He pulled the trigger. Isabella reacted before she could think. She threw herself between Dante and the gunfire. The shot rang out. A burning pain exploded through her shoulder. She collapsed into Dante's arms. His face drained of color. Isabella! The traitor disappeared into the smoke as chaos consumed the hallway. Blood spread across Isabella's white blouse. She struggled to stay conscious. The last thing she heard before darkness began closing in was Dante's voice. Not commanding. Not fearless. Breaking. Don't leave me. Dante caught Isabella before she struck the marble floor. Her body felt frighteningly light in his arms. Blood spread rapidly across the front of her blouse, staining the white fabric a deep crimson. For one terrifying second, every sound disappeared. The gunfire, the shouting, the explosions outside. None of it mattered. Only her. Isabella. His voice was low, almost pleading. Look at me. Her eyelashes fluttered. I'm trying. A weak smile appeared on her lips. I guess. This dress wasn't made for firefights. Even wounded, she tried to make him smile. Instead, his jaw tightened. You are not allowed to joke right now. I'll keep that in mind. Dante pressed his hand firmly against the wound while Vittorio's tactical team pushed the attackers back through the corridor. Medical team. Vittorio shouted into his radio. Now! Bullets slammed into the reinforced walls as Romano security established a defensive perimeter around them. Within moments, Two combat medics rushed into the hallway carrying emergency trauma kits. One quickly examined Isabella's shoulder. The bullet passed through. He carefully cut away part of her sleeve. Heavy bleeding, but it missed the heart. Dante didn't move. Will she live? If we stop the bleeding immediately. The medic worked quickly, packing the wound before applying a pressure dressing. She's losing blood. We need to move. Outside, another explosion shook the mansion. The lights flickered once before emergency generators activated. Vittorio glanced at the security monitors. They're inside the East Wing. How many? 30. Maybe more. Dante slowly stood, helping Isabella to her feet. She leaned against him, pale but conscious. You should leave me. He looked at her as though she had spoken another language. I beg your pardon. You need both hands free. I'll slow you down. His answer came instantly. I would carry this entire mansion before I left you behind. She searched his face. There wasn't the slightest hesitation, only absolute certainty. The words settled deep inside her heart. Vittorio guided them through a hidden corridor beneath the estate. Very few people knew the underground passage existed. Stone walls stretched beneath the mansion, connecting the main residence to a private command center built decades earlier. As they hurried through the tunnel, security teams reported constant updates. North Gardens compromised. West entrance secure. 3 hostiles captured. Multiple casualties. Dante listened without interrupting. His decisions remained calm despite the chaos. Seal Tunnel 3. Evacuate the household staff. No explosives near civilian quarters. Even during war, innocent people came first. Isabella noticed. It was exactly the kind of leader she had hoped he truly was. Halfway through the tunnel, she suddenly stopped walking. Dante immediately turned. What is it? She stared at the concrete wall beside them. No. Her breathing became uneven. I know this place. Vittorio frowned. That's impossible. I've never been here. She slowly reached toward the wall. Her fingers traced a faint crack running through the concrete. Then another memory surfaced. Not from childhood. Not from the wedding. From 3 years ago. She closed her eyes. There. She pointed farther down the tunnel. There's another room behind that wall. Everyone exchanged confused glances. Vittorio shook his head. There are no rooms on the blueprints. There is. Her voice became stronger. I remember. I designed it. Silence followed. Dante looked carefully at the wall. Open it. Engineers quickly scanned the structure. One of them looked stunned. Boss. She's right. There is a concealed chamber. A hydraulic cutting tool sliced through the reinforced concrete. Moments later, a hidden steel door appeared. No one had known it existed. The lock had remained untouched for years. Inside, the room was filled with dusty servers, backup power systems, and rows of encrypted storage drives. Isabella slowly walked inside. Then she saw it. The master control console. Memories flooded back all at once. I built this. She whispered the words more to herself than anyone else. The emergency command center. Vittorio looked around in disbelief. This facility isn't connected to the mansion. It wasn't supposed to be. She approached the console. It's independent. Completely isolated. No outside network. Dante stepped beside her. What does it control? She powered on the ancient terminal. One by one, dormant monitors came to life. Security cameras, satellite maps, harbor surveillance, estate defenses, the smart port emergency network. Everything. She stared at the screen in horror. This isn't just a backup. It's the master override. The room fell silent. If someone controls this console. She looked directly at Dante. They control every security system we own. Before anyone could respond, one final monitor activated by itself. A live video feed appeared. Gabriel Voss smiled calmly into the camera. I was wondering when you'd remember. He applauded slowly. Congratulations, Isabella. You finally found the room you built for me. Her blood ran cold. I built it to protect emergency systems. You did. And then I improved it. He leaned closer to the camera. Thank you for designing the safest digital fortress ever created. Tonight, I'm going to use it to erase every trace of the Romano syndicate. The monitor switched to dozens of live camera feeds. Oil terminals, power substations, shipping lanes, fuel depots, every critical system under Romano control. Voss pressed a key somewhere off-screen. Warning lights flashed across every display. Global override activated. A computerized countdown appeared. 1500 hours. 15 minutes. If the system completed its sequence, every automated defense and industrial safeguard across the Romano network would shut down simultaneously. Entire ports would descend into chaos. Fuel terminals could ignite. Ships could collide. Thousands of innocent lives would be at risk. The room became completely still. Then Isabella stepped toward the console. Her injured shoulder throbbed with every movement. She ignored it. Dante reached for her hand. Can you stop this? She looked at the blinking countdown, then at the code scrolling across the screen. Finally, she met his eyes. Yes. She took a slow breath. But only if I finish what I started 3 years ago. The countdown reached 14:32. The countdown continued without mercy. 14:31. 14:30. Rows of monitors bathed the hidden control room in an eerie blue glow. Warning alerts flashed across every screen as automated ports, shipping lanes, fuel depots, and emergency networks prepared to surrender control to Gabriel Voss's malicious program. No one spoke. Every eye turned toward Isabella. She rolled back her sleeves despite the fresh bandage wrapped around her shoulder. Pain shot through her arm, but she ignored it. Years of solving impossible engineering problems had taught her one lesson above all else. Panic wastes time. Thinking saves lives. She sat before the master console, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. I remember now, she whispered. Dante stepped beside her. What do you remember? When we built this system, I never trusted any software to have absolute authority. She looked at the aging terminal. So I created one final safeguard. Vittorio leaned forward. A fail-safe. She nodded. A human override. Her fingers began flying across the keyboard. Ancient command windows opened one after another. Encrypted engineering menus. Maintenance protocols. Diagnostic pathways. The hidden architecture she had designed years earlier slowly came back to life. On the largest monitor, Gabriel Voss watched through the live camera feed. He smiled. You finally remembered. I knew you would. You always were my brightest engineer. Isabella didn't stop typing. I was never your engineer. I worked for the truth. Voss chuckled. The truth doesn't win wars. No, Dante answered calmly. But it builds a future. The countdown reached 9:18. Suddenly every monitor flashed red. Primary firewall rejected. Voss laughed. You designed the system. I spent 3 years redesigning it. You can't beat me with your own code. Isabella studied the scrolling lines carefully. Then she smiled. No, I don't have to. She opened a forgotten engineering archive labeled Foundation Protocol. Voss's smile faded. What are you doing? The one thing you never expected. She entered a sequence of commands no one else recognized. This isn't software. She looked toward Dante. It's architecture. Everyone stared at her. The system isn't protected by stronger code. It's protected by its own physical design. She activated dozens of dormant backup processors hidden throughout the infrastructure. One by one, the network separated into independent sections. Instead of one massive system, it became hundreds of isolated ones. Voss's expression changed completely. No! The connection between terminals began disappearing. Control vanished from his screens. He frantically entered commands. Nothing responded. You disconnected the network. I compartmentalized it, Isabella corrected. The way it was always supposed to work. The countdown froze. 2:47. Then every warning message vanished. Across the control room, green status lights illuminated one after another. System secure. Override terminated. Emergency network restored. Silence filled the room. Then applause broke out. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just genuine relief. Engineers embraced one another. Security officers lowered their weapons. Vittorio allowed himself the smallest smile. Dante simply looked at Isabella. She hadn't defeated Voss with violence. She had defeated him with integrity, intelligence, and the courage to finish what she had started years before. Hours later, federal tactical teams arrested Gabriel Voss at an abandoned communications facility outside the city. The remaining mercenaries surrendered soon afterward. Every surviving conspirator faced prosecution. The attacks, the kidnappings, the sabotage, the murders. None of it remained hidden. Justice arrived through evidence instead of revenge. When reporters later asked Dante why he hadn't ordered retaliation, he answered simply, "My wife taught me there's a difference between winning a war and building peace." Several weeks passed. The city slowly returned to normal. The smart port reopened with stronger safeguards designed by Isabella herself. This time, every emergency protocol required multiple independent approvals. No single person could ever control the entire network again. Her work became the new international standard for critical infrastructure security. Governments requested her advice. Universities invited her to speak. Engineering organizations honored her achievements. She accepted only the invitations that helped young engineers. Fame had never been her goal. Making people safer still was. One crisp Saturday morning, Dante asked Isabella to join him for a drive. No security convoy followed them. Just one classic silver Grand Tourer winding through quiet countryside roads. Eventually they stopped before an elegant brick building overlooking a peaceful river. Workers were placing the final letters onto a polished stone sign. Isabella read it slowly. The Elena Romano Center for Safe Infrastructure. She looked at Dante. You named it after your mother. And someone else. He nodded toward the entrance. Inside, classrooms overlooked engineering laboratories. Scholarship offices occupied the upper floor. Young students explored interactive safety simulations. Emergency responders trained in advanced disaster management. A second bronze plaque rested near the entrance. She walked closer. It read, "Founded by Dante Romano and Isabella Bennett Romano. Dedicated to those who believe intelligence serves humanity best when guided by compassion." Tears filled her eyes. You built this. We built this. He smiled. All I did was provide the funding. You provided the vision. She laughed softly. I think that's my line. That evening they returned to the rooftop garden where so much had changed between them. The city lights shimmered below. The roses bloomed exactly as they had on the night they first spoke honestly. Dante reached into his jacket. Isabella laughed. If that's another engineering manual. It isn't. He knelt before her. Not because tradition required it. Because respect did. He opened a velvet box. Inside rested a vintage diamond ring that had belonged to his mother. Simple. Elegant. Timeless. I married you because I believed it would save two families. He looked into her eyes. I fell in love with you because you reminded me that strength never needs to be cruel. His voice softened. You've never asked me to become someone else. You've only helped me become the man I wanted to be. He gently took her hand. Isabella Bennett Romano. My partner. My equal. My greatest courage. Will you choose me again? Tears escaped down her cheeks as she laughed through them. I never stopped choosing you. He slipped the ring onto her finger before kissing her forehead, not as a symbol of ownership, but as a promise of devotion. Months later, they celebrated their marriage with a quiet ceremony attended by family, engineers, doctors, first responders, and the loyal people who had stood beside them through every danger. No extravagant displays. No political speeches. Just laughter. Fresh flowers, good food, and the feeling that they had finally earned peace. People still called Dante the Mafia Boss. He no longer cared, because the title he treasured most came from Isabella whenever she smiled and said, "Come home." And whenever young engineers asked Isabella how she had changed one of the world's most feared men, she always answered the same way. I didn't. I simply believed there was still goodness worth protecting. Together, they proved that true power isn't measured by fear, wealth, or violence. It's measured by the lives you protect, the people you lift up, and the love you choose every single day. If you enjoyed this story, let me know your favorite moment in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic mafia romance stories with unforgettable heroes, courageous heroines, and heart-pounding twists. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life.